Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Musings. I am your host, Ben, coming at you on a somewhat dreary June morning. It certainly, in my view, could do with being substantially nicer weather-wise, but I'm not going to use this video to moan about the weather. I am instead going to talk a bit about the end of May, which has been an absolutely mad month for me. May brings a few family birthdays, and it's also brought this time around a few days of loan trading at work, which, hey-ho, is just what it is. And it finally sort of delivered lots of trips into London, along with a couple of very, very late nights. And it also delivered to me, and you may pick up on this in my voice, a lovely cold, which is, of course, always greatly appreciated. And if you can't tell, that was sarcasm. So, May. May's been a busy, hectic, mad month for a number of reasons. On the if you will, the political side of things, we've had the announcement of a general election here in the UK, and therefore, of course, things are starting to gear up for that. What's interesting about this election is it's being played out, at least in part, through means like TikTok and other things like that, with these kind of little snappy riposts taken by political parties at each other. And the whole thing feels kind of childish in a way. But I guess it kind of reflects that the way in which parties need to run campaigns has changed down the years because technology and communication have changed down the years. So, of course, things are a bit different now with that. But it's kind of amusing to watch this play out and watch political parties sort of use memes as a method of campaigning against one another. It's a bit odd to watch all that unfold. We had the big news from the United States about Donald Trump being found guilty on all 34 charges of falsifying business records. That relates, of course, to hush money paid to a porn star, and it relates to how he tried to kind of conceal that prior to the run-up to the 2016 elections there. And so that's been in the news, to put it mildly. Whether or not Trump being convicted will help or hinder Joe Biden remains to be seen, because a lot of people more or less worship Trump, especially hardline conservative Christians. They seem to be able to see past all of Trump's flaws and faults, and all of Trump's failures, of which there are many. And they regard him almost as being like a messiah, which is baffling to me, because they treat Trump almost as though he's the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. But he really isn't in any meaningful way, shape or form. And I don't understand why they are so committed to everything that he does, despite it failing time and time again. But hey-ho, that's pretty much a different video for a different time. In many respects, and I don't think I'll ever understand their mindset there. Anyway, let's move on to more interesting territory. So, as I said, May has been a hectic month. At one point, I had 3 trips to London in the span of 5 days, which, as you can imagine, is somewhat exhausting. Each occasion was for my daughter's birthday, and therefore absolutely worthwhile, and I will do what is required. It's you could say it's a sacrifice. It's not a sacrifice as far as I'm concerned to spend time like that with my daughter, not at all. But it was exhausting, no word of a lie, especially some of the late nights. The first occasion was on a Thursday. We went down to London. We finished basically, like, everyone came home from work / school / whatever. I might have been off that day, I'm not sure actually. And we got back home, quickly wolfed down some food, and then we were rushing out the door and onto the train. and we went to the London Coliseum to see Spirited Away on stage. Now, if you're familiar with Spirited Away, the film, then you'll know, of course, it's a very famous animated Studio Ghibli film, very famous Japanese animation studio, Studio Ghibli. And it's a beautiful film. It is typically very creative and quirky. And just, I really enjoyed it. The play, well, I did wonder how they were going to pull this off, because with the film you have amazing characters and very strange creatures and that kind of thing, but the play, through clever use of staging, clever use of props and costumes, and just generally speaking having a bit of fun, was able to make all this come together in a way that felt very, very authentic. One thing which was unusual, but it also happened to work in my view as well, is that the entire play was in Japanese. There were screens with English subtitles, but the whole thing was actually in Japanese. And that's, well, to me, that's a little bit unusual to have a London play performed entirely in Japanese, but it did contribute quite nicely to the authenticity of the whole affair, and I really, really enjoyed it. So, that was quite, I guess, rewarding in some respects. If you do get the chance to go and see it on stage, it's worthwhile seeing. It is a beautiful production. Just be prepared for a very late night, as I say. The play started at 7:30, but it didn't finish until 10:30, so it was very long. And consequently, we didn't get home till almost 1 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got the tube and got back to the station and caught the last train, it was a lengthy process, to put it mildly. So that was exhausting, but there was no rest for the wicked, because the following day I had work. So it was a case of up we go and back we go to the grindstone, so to speak. I think it was this occasion. There was an occasion where I was almost late for work on the grounds that I set the alarm later than I should have, because I was just so tired and so addled that I couldn't think straight. And it wasn't until my wife kind of nudged me and sort of reminded me I had work that I kind of had to leap out of bed and get ready. So there was a little bit of chaos there. That might have been the more recent occasion, actually. I think it was, because on that occasion I was also grappling with this cold. But prior to the cold, as it happens, we had another trip into London, which was for MCM, which is basically a convention to do with anime and fantasy, and there's an overlap, as there is with video games and that kind of thing. So this was another trip into London. This was to the Excel Centre, which isn't necessarily in principle as long a journey, because we're not going into the heart of London, but it's still quite hectic in some respects. You're still having to make changes here and there, and it's a day where you're on your feet the entire time. We didn't have to be there super early, although we wanted to get there for when the doors opened. So we were still setting an early alarm, still at the door, sooner than I would have wanted, by any means, and then chasing around this huge conference hall for a few hours. People sometimes go to these things to do like a meet and greet with actors, get autographs and photos and that kind of thing. We weren't there to do any of that. My daughter simply wanted to look at the stalls, look at the stuff and buy a few things and get dressed up as well. There is a certain sense for me with events and places like this that I am among my people, so to speak. I am with fellow nerds and geeks, and you kind of feel a sense of belonging within these crowds, and you get to admire some truly wonderful and creative costumes and cosplays. The amount of effort that people put into these things never fails to amaze me, and it goes to show the passion that people have for the things they love is always impressive. And it's always, I think, a beautiful thing in many respects. One thing that I did whilst I was there, however, when it came to food time, I managed to make a glaring mistake with that. and I have already been mocked quite vigorously for this. We queued up to get some food. My wife and daughter got a rice box between them that they wanted, and I queued up to get a burger and chips. Unbeknownst to me, because in my view this wasn't made particularly clear by the burger van, what I was queuing up for absolutely ages, turned out to be a plant-based burger. But by the time you get to like the front of the queue, you've already been waiting for ages, you're hungry, and you just need something to eat. And I was committed, basically, to this. So I ended up with a cheese and bacon burger that was fake cheese and fake bacon. It was okay, but to me, it can't replace the real thing. It just can't. You know, I was there cheese on the burger? No, I don't think there was cheese on the burger. So it was fake bacon and a fake burger, for lack of a better word. There was fake cheese on the fries, and that was okay. But again, doesn't, to me, compare to the real thing. But as I say, by that point, I was committed. I wasn't going to queue up again and wait for ages, so I just had to kind of grit my teeth and get on with it and enjoy this plant-based burger. I really just wanted something, I guess, proper, for lack of a better word, but oh well, hey-ho, you live and learn. So we came home relatively early on the Saturday from this event, and then we just kind of chilled out Saturday afternoon, went to bed feeling fine, woke up Sunday morning with a stinking cold. I don't know where it came from. No one else in the group that travelled came down with anything, so I don't know what I did to deserve feeling so rough. But it persisted rather stubbornly, and has persisted despite the rather liberal use of medication. It doesn't really feel like the medication has touched it very much. I do feel a bit better at the time of recording this video, actually. I feel a little bit brighter now, but I didn't feel particularly great over the last sort of few days. But on one of those occasions, I had my parents coming down to see my daughter for her birthday. So I had to kind of try and put on a bit of a brave face for that. And then the following day, we were back into London again to see another play. But on this occasion, we didn't have to leave quite so early. The play was still starting at about 7:30, but we weren't. You know, we got into London in the middle of the day, having had a bit of a lie-in first. We weren't in a rush. I was off work, so we weren't late, kind of panic to get places. And we spent the day doing, among other things, a couple of shops. We went to Forbidden Planet, which is a very famous sort of sci-fi and fantasy shop in Tottenham Court Road. And we also went to a Waterstones bookshop in Piccadilly, which is absolutely enormous, absolutely huge. I think it's 8 stories worth of books, if you can imagine that, 8 floors of books. So if you're a book lover, that's kind of like heaven in many respects. So we did all of that, got some lunch whilst we were there, saw the world's biggest croissant, which is, well, that's actually not the world's biggest croissant, but it's the biggest croissant I've seen in person, without a doubt. And then we kind of drifted around London for a bit. We drifted around Covent Garden, which is very famous for being like a local kind of marketplace, and there were lots of trinkets and things there, lots of street performers as well, doing things like juggling and magic tricks and that kind of thing. Finally, we took ourselves to Chinatown for our tea, and we had a buffet Chinese, which wasn't amazing, but it was okay. There's lots of places you can go to in that neck of the woods if you want that kind of experience, but the trouble is it's difficult to know what's going to be good and what's not. And it's just kind of like almost like a jumbled blur of different options. So in the end, we just picked one, and it was okay. It filled a hole. It wasn't unpleasant by any means, but there are other places with more options out there. So next time, if there is a next time for this sort of thing, we'll be slightly more discerning perhaps as to where we go. Finally, from there we headed up to Baker Street, and therefore I got to see the oldest station on the London Underground network. Woo! Well, certainly one of the oldest stations anyway. And we got to see 221B Baker Street, the home, of course, of Sherlock Holmes. We weren't there for those reasons, however. We were there to see another play, as I say. We headed up to the Marylebone Theatre, which is just kind of a short walk from Baker Street Station. And we saw a play called The Government Inspector, which is by a 19th century Russian playwright, and it was kind of adapted to be set in a small English province near London, where, owing to some confusion and some mistaken identity, the rather corrupt council members of this little province, they believe that there's a government inspector in their midst, and they basically, without giving away too many spoilers, they kind of wine and dine the wrong person, so to speak, who has no scruples about taking advantage of this whatsoever. It was very funny. It pokes a bit of fun at the government and the structures of power and authority. And it was the venue itself for it was very kind of like small compared to the London Coliseum, but it worked really, really well. You could see the stage perfectly from any angle. I think the actors were enjoying themselves, which is always quite important with these things. And yeah, the whole thing was just, I thought, very, very pleasant, very, very nice. That was a kind of like not quite as late a finish. It finished at 9:30, but we still didn't get home till gone midnight, owing to various issues with the trains. We got back to our regular station to discover it was closed. Unbeknownst to us, there were engineering works. Now, it would have been nice when I bought the tickets to go into London if someone had mentioned that to me then, but they didn't. And I don't recall seeing any signs at the station advising of engineering works for the way back, but hey-ho. But it meant we had to go around the houses. We had to go to a different station to get out of London, and the direct route home was closed, which meant we had to go to a different station and get a taxi. So it was all a bit faffy, and when you're feeling tired and when you're feeling not particularly well, you don't need all of that, especially because, once again, following day, back at work. So, you're dog tired, you don't feel very well, and you still have to drag yourself out of bed to go to work. Yay! What great, tremendous fun. But it is what it is. But just to come back to the Marylebone Theatre for a second, because I want to talk about this. It was, as I say, a lovely little venue. It was, from my point of view at least, amazingly cheap when it came to things like drinks. A lot of theatres in London will charge you an arm and a leg just for a tea or a coffee. This place wasn't like that. The only drawback to this place, to this lovely intimate little venue, is that the coffee machine wasn't working, and they were kind of like scrambling to try and fix it. But the staff there were absolutely lovely, and I think really quite enthusiastic about working there, which tells you they're good employers. And the whole occasion was, as I say, it was just a pleasant little play. My daughter really enjoyed it. She enjoyed her entire experience over the span of the weekend. And then she got to have a week off school because of half term, and I got to carry on going to work, because that's what adults do. We get to carry on going to work. Hooray! Even when we feel sick as a dog. So that has been my experience, so to speak, over the span of the last few days of May. May, as I say, it's been somewhat crazy, but now we're into June, and we have to look forward. What can we look forward to in June, of course? What is June going to deliver to us? I keep hoping that we'll get a permanent break in this miserable weather we've been having. It's been really up and down. We've had the occasional bright sunshine and blue skies, but nowhere near enough of it. And we're kind of like, at the time of doing this video, back to grey again, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's June, and whilst you don't necessarily expect blazing hot sunshine in June, you at least expect some sort of sign that the weather is improving. And it really it's stupid things to get annoyed by because you can't control it. But the weather is something which really does bug me about this country sometimes. We don't get nearly enough of a summer sometimes, and we just need things to be a lot nicer than they have been of late. And one of the other things about this weather, and we've had so much rain lately, is that it makes my garden grow. And I hate that because it means I've then got to cut it. And I hate gardening. I loathe gardening. It's such a bloody chore as far as I'm concerned. It takes up one of the most valuable things to me, which is time. My free time is valuable to me. I hate it being disrupted by having to faff around with things like gardening. I really do. And yet, that's going to be probably on the agenda in the not-so-distant future because the rain has seen the recently cut grass sprout rather heavily again. And it's just like, honestly, that's why it sounds sort of cynical in a way, but I want a really hot summer so it kills the bloody grass. I haven't got to worry about cutting it for ages, but oh well, we'll see how that goes. That's a little bit of a rant for you there, just to kind of treat you all. So, there we have it. There we have my thoughts and my musings and my meanderings for the end of May. What will June bring, of course? Well, it's going to bring a lot in the way of politics and campaigning here in the UK. I don't doubt that for a second. It's going to bring a couple of trips for me as well. A few little things going on in that regard. And, well, beyond that, I just don't know. I just have no idea what else is going to happen. And hopefully, whatever does happen will happen in a positive way and be positive. But all we can do is wait and see. So, with that, I will say that I hope you are all well. I hope you all remain well. And I wish you all a very prosperous month of June. Take care, everyone.